I woke up to a sound that didn't belong in the woods. Not wind, not a branch snapping under a deer. This was a soft, steady scrape, like rubber dragging across wood. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, then froze. The dog didn't bark. My old hound, Ranger, always barked at anything near the porch. Tonight he was silent, pressed tight against my leg, breathing like he was trying not to be heard. I slid out of bed and moved to the window. The porch light was off, but the moon was bright enough to draw hard lines across the yard. The frost on the grass made everything look pale, almost clean. Then I saw the shape at the bottom of the steps. A bear, not a small one. Broad shoulders, thick neck, the kind that makes you understand how thin a door really is. He stood sideways to the porch, head lowered, and for a second I thought he was sniffing for food. I had a trash can out back, and last week a raccoon got into it. Bears had been seen closer to town this fall, but the bear wasn't sniffing. He had something in his mouth. At first I thought it was a chunk of bark. Then it swung as he shifted his weight, and I caught the outline. A strap, a zipper, a pocket, a bag, a human bag. My stomach tightened the way it does right before bad news. The bear held it like it mattered, careful, not tearing it apart. The fabric was dark and wet, smeared with mud, and there were long scratches on it like it had been pulled through brush. Ranger lifted his head and whined once low. I put a hand on his collar. "Stay," I whispered. My voice came out thin. I backed away from the window, grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen, and checked the lock on the front door even though I already knew it was locked. I stood there, listening. The scrape came again. Not claws on wood. The sound of the bag dragging across the porch boards. He was climbing. I killed the kitchen light so I wouldn't be a silhouette, then eased the curtain back a second time. The bear was on the porch now, close enough that I could see his breath. He lowered his head and set the bag down right in front of my door. Then he stepped back, and he didn't leave. He sat, heavy and slow, like he had all the time in the world. His ears moved once, and he looked toward the trees, then back to the door, like he was waiting for me to notice what he brought. My mind ran in two directions at once. One part of me wanted to bolt to the back door, jump in my truck, and drive until I saw streetlights. The other part was stuck on the bag. If that bag belonged to someone, how did it end up in a bear's mouth on my porch? I kept the flashlight down, not shining it through the glass. I didn't want to startle him. I didn't want to trigger whatever switch makes an animal decide you are a problem. I called the only person I knew would pick up at this hour. My neighbor, Luke, lived a mile down the road. He worked nights sometimes and kept his phone loud. He answered on the third ring, voice rough. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "There's a bear on my porch," I said. "And he brought a bag." A pause. Then Luke got serious. "A bag? Like yours?" "No, like someone's backpack." Luke took a breath. "Don't open the door. Don't do anything stupid. I'm coming." I wanted to tell him I wasn't stupid. The truth was, I didn't know what the right thing was. I could see the bag from where I stood. It was not ripped open like a bear had found snacks. It looked placed. Ranger pressed against my leg again. His body was tense, but his eyes kept flicking to the door like he wanted to understand too. The bear shifted. His claws clicked once on the wood. He leaned forward, nose close to the bag, then looked at the glass pane. Right at me. For a second my lungs forgot how to work. His eyes weren't wild. They were focused, dark, steady, and too aware. I raised one hand, palm open, like you do without thinking when you want someone to stop. The bear didn't move. He just stared, and the longer he stayed, the more the fear in my chest changed shape. It turned from immediate panic into something colder. Concern. Because if he was comfortable enough to sit on my porch, in the open, holding a person's bag, then something had pushed him out of the normal rules of the woods. Luke's headlights cut through the trees about 10 minutes later. The bear's head snapped toward the road. For the first time he looked unsure. He stood, huge, and took 2 slow steps to the edge of the porch. Luke's truck rolled up and stopped by my gate. He didn't get out right away. He killed the engine and sat in the dark. I cracked the door just enough to speak through the chain lock. "Luke," I said. "He's still here." "I can see him," Luke said. "Don't open it." The bear huffed once. Not a roar, more like a warning to himself. He looked at the bag again, then at me. Then he backed off the porch, one step at a time, never turning his back. When he hit the grass, he paused, like he was deciding whether his job was done. Then he moved into the tree line and vanished without sound. Luke got out with a flashlight and a long stick, the kind you keep in a truck for no good reason until suddenly there is a good reason. He scanned the yard, then walked up slow. He nudged the bag with the stick. The strap slid. No animal ran out of it. No food smell hit us. Luke looked at me. That's a real bag. I nodded, throat tight. We stood over it like it was a snake. The fabric was nylon, expensive, a brand I recognized from the outdoor store in town. There was dried mud packed into the seams. The zipper was closed, but one side pocket was half open. Luke said, "You sure you want to know what's inside?" I didn't, but I also didn't want to pretend I never saw it. Fear is easy. It tells you to protect yourself. Responsibility is quieter. It asks what happens if you don't. I took a breath and knelt. My fingers shook as I pulled the zipper down, slow, so if something jumped out I could let go. The bag opened. A cold, metallic smell drifted out, mixed with wet pine and something sharp, like antiseptic. On top was a folded map, creased hard and smeared with dirt. Under it, a bright orange whistle on a lanyard. A compact first aid kit, torn open, and then, tucked against the inner wall, a phone sealed in a plastic pouch. The screen was cracked, but when I pressed the side button it lit up. No signal bars. Just one notification that made my stomach drop. A missed call from emergency services. Luke leaned closer. "Ethan, why would emergency be calling someone who's out here?" I reached deeper and my fingers hit plastic. A driver's license. The photo was smeared, but the name was clear enough. Grant Hollis. There was also a single car key on a cheap keychain and a receipt from yesterday for gas at the station by the highway. I didn't answer Luke, because the truth was already sitting in my hands. Somebody had been trying to get help, and somehow, this bear had carried their bag straight to my door. Luke left just before dawn. He said he'd call the ranger station as soon as they opened, then come back if they needed him. I locked the door behind him and stood in the quiet kitchen longer than I should have, listening to his truck fade down the road. The bag was still on the table, right where we left it, like an object that refused to become ordinary. The house smelled like coffee and wet nylon. I hadn't slept at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bear's face in the porch light. Not threatening, not curious, expectant, like he'd done what he came to do and was waiting for the rest to be handled. A few hours had passed since he disappeared into the trees, but it felt stretched out, distorted, like the night had thinned everything, leaving the truth exposed in the daylight. I spread the contents of the bag out slowly, lining them up on the table the way you do when you're trying to make sense of something that already scares you. Grant Hollis, age mid-40s, address 3 counties south. The driver's license was cracked straight down the middle, probably from a fall or being stepped on. The phone still showed no signal, the battery icon blinking red like a warning. The map was creased hard and marked with a pen, a rough loop through Forest Service roads, one circle pressed again and again near the old quarry. There were receipts too. Gas from the highway station. A sandwich wrapper shoved into a side pocket. Small things that said he hadn't planned on disappearing. Then I found something I hadn't noticed in the dark. A photo, folded tight, edges soft from being handled too much. A woman and a teenage boy standing by a lake, smiling into the sun. On the back, a date from last summer and a short note written in blue ink. This wasn't a thief's bag. It wasn't abandoned. It was returned. That realization settled heavy in my chest. Bears don't do favors. They don't deliver lost property. They follow food, fear, instinct. Unless something interrupts that instinct. Unless something goes wrong. At 9, I called the county ranger station. A woman answered, calm but tired, the kind of voice that already knew how the day was going to go. "I found a backpack last night," I said. "On my porch. A bear brought it." There was a pause. I could almost hear her deciding whether I was serious. "Can you repeat the name on the identification?" "Grant Hollis." Another pause, longer this time. Typing. Papers shifting. "Sir," she said carefully, "we received a report yesterday evening. His truck was located off Route 7 near the quarry road. Keys were not inside. He failed to check in overnight." My throat tightened. "I have his keys." Silence followed, then a breath. "Okay, we need you not to handle anything else. Where exactly are you located?" I gave her my address. She asked detailed questions about the bag, the porch, the time. Then she asked about the bear. I told her everything. How it stood there. How it placed the bag. How it waited before leaving. She didn't comment on that part, and that somehow made it worse. A ranger named Mark arrived just before noon. Tall, sunburned, boots caked with dry mud like he'd already been out searching. He photographed the bag, the contents, the porch, and the tracks in the yard. Then he asked me to walk him through the night again, slower this time. When I finished, he leaned against his truck and looked toward the tree line. "We've been searching that area since early morning," he said. "Helicopters grounded because of fog. Ground teams are moving, but it's slow to rain." I pointed at the map. He circled this spot. Mark studied it. "That's about 4 miles from where the truck was found. Steep ground. Old service trail washed out years ago. Easy place to get hurt." I hesitated before speaking. "The bear came from that direction." Mark met my eyes. "You're sure?" I nodded. He stood quiet for a moment, then spoke into his radio, relaying the information without judgment. The easy thing would have been to hand over the bag and step back. Let the system take it from there. No one would have blamed me for staying out of it. But the image of the bear backing away from my porch stayed with me. The way he checked the bag twice, like he needed to be certain it was seen and understood. Mark closed his notebook. "We're setting up a wider search perimeter this afternoon. If you noticed anything else, even something that feels insignificant, now's the time." I took a breath. He didn't act like a bear looking for food. Mark didn't smile. "That's not insignificant." The afternoon dragged. News spread faster than it should have. A reporter called. I didn't answer. Luke texted twice, then called. "You okay? I can come back." At 4, Mark called again. "We found footprints. Human. Leading toward the quarry trail. Weak impressions, but recent." I asked where exactly. "Not far from where you said the bear came from." That settled something inside me. I grabbed my jacket and keys. I told myself I was just going to point out terrain, to explain the places people underestimate. I'd grown up hiking those woods. I knew where the ground collapsed under leaves, where water collected, where sound carried wrong. Mark met me at the trailhead. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know." The forest felt different in daylight. Less threatening, more honest. Fallen leaves hid sharp rocks. The air smelled like damp earth and old metal. About half a mile in, Mark raised a hand. "You hear that?" At first, I didn't. Then came the low crack of brush, deliberate and heavy. I felt it before I saw it. The shift in the air, the awareness of being watched. Across the clearing, near a stand of pines, the bear stood again. Same size, same dark coat. No bag this time. He looked at us, then turned his head toward the trail ahead. Not running, not charging, just moving. Mark whispered, "That bear's leading us." I didn't answer. I stepped forward anyway. They found Grant the next morning. Not where anyone expected. Mark called just after sunrise. His voice was different this time, steadier, like a knot had finally loosened after being pulled too tight for too long. He didn't rush his words, and that alone told me more than anything else could have. "He's alive," he said. "Dehydrated. Hurt, but alive." I sat down on the edge of the bed and let the phone rest against my ear. For a moment I couldn't speak. The words felt unreal, like something meant for someone else, like I had accidentally answered a call that wasn't supposed to reach me. "Where?" "About a mile past the quarry trail," Mark said. "Down in a narrow cut where the old service road collapsed years ago." He couldn't climb out. Spent the night there, maybe longer. We almost missed him. Later that day, Mark stopped by with more details. Grant had been taken to the hospital in the nearest town. Broken ankle, mild hypothermia, a concussion that explained why he'd gotten turned around so badly and kept making the wrong decisions without realizing it. He asked about the bag, Mark added. First thing he asked when he was conscious enough. Kept asking if anyone had found it, like that mattered more than the pain. I nodded slowly, even though Mark couldn't see me. The bag was still on the table between us, empty now, looking smaller than it had any right to. According to Grant, the fall happened fast. One bad step on loose gravel, then pain and darkness. When he came to, his leg wouldn't hold weight. His phone still had signal for a few minutes, long enough to try emergency services, then nothing. Battery draining. Cold settling into his bones as the night came down hard. The bag was too heavy to drag with one working leg. He took what he could carry in his pockets and left the rest, telling himself he would come back for it when daylight came and his head cleared. Daylight came. He didn't. Grant said he heard movement during the night. Heavy steps moving slow through the brush. Breathing that didn't sound human and didn't sound like wind. He stayed still, afraid that calling out would make things worse, afraid of drawing attention he couldn't handle. By morning, the bag was gone. At first, he thought someone had taken it. A hiker, a hunter, anyone passing through. Then he realized something else. Without the bag, There was no reason to stay where he was. No food, no map, no spare clothes, no small comforts telling him to wait it out and hope. So he moved, on one leg. Using a broken branch as a crutch, he followed the slope down, sliding more than walking, stopping whenever the pain made his vision blur. He reached water by sound before he saw it. He drank until it hurt. He rested until the shaking slowed. Then he moved again, because staying still no longer felt safe. That's where the search team found him later that morning, barely conscious but alive. If the bag had stayed with him, Mark said, he likely would have waited. And waiting would have killed him. That night, after Mark left, I stood on the porch alone for a long time. The boards were dry now. No scratches. No marks. No sign that anything unusual had ever happened there at all. Ranger hadn't barked since the search ended. He slept through the night stretched out by the door, breathing slow and even, like the tension had finally drained out of him. I thought about the bear. How he came straight to my door. How he set the bag down and stepped back, giving space, like his part in it was already finished. Not once did he act like it belonged to him. He never came back. Days passed, then a week. The woods returned to their usual sounds. Birds arguing at dawn, wind moving through bare branches, distant engines on the highway reminding me that life kept going whether we noticed or not. Life settled back into its familiar shape. I went back to work, fixed a fence that had been leaning too long, cleared leaves from the path, bought groceries, answered messages from people who had heard pieces of the story and wanted details I didn't give. Grant sent a message through Mark a few days later. "Tell him thank you," he said. "Whoever he is." I read that line more than once, then set the phone down. I never replied. I didn't know how. Because the truth is, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I didn't track anyone down. I didn't carry anyone out of the woods. I didn't save anyone with my hands. I just didn't close the door. Sometimes responsibility doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't look heroic. Sometimes it shows up heavy and quiet, dropped on your porch by something that doesn't even know your name. You can ignore it. You can pass it along and pretend it never touched you. Or you can open it. One evening, about a week later, I walked the edge of the tree line where the porch light barely reaches. I stood there longer than usual, listening to the dark, half expecting something and half hoping nothing would come. Nothing moved. No eyes reflecting light. No heavy steps. Just the woods, breathing the way they always had. I turned back toward the house, shut off the light, and went inside. Some things don't stay with you forever, but the choice does.